Welcome back to the Get Unstuck and On Target podcast. I'm Mike O'Neill with Bench Builders, and we're business coaches who love helping leaders sleep better because they've solved their tough planning, process, and people problems. In this podcast, we're talking with thought leaders to get their insights on ways to help you or your business get unstuck. Joining me today is Deb Krier. Deb is the founder of Wise Women Communications, a full-service marketing agency. But it was while helping organizations with their marketing and PR needs that she noticed that their executives were often overlooking the value of building their own personal brand online. In response, she founded LinkedIn for C-Suite to provide busy leaders the help that they need to build their networks worldwide. Welcome, Deb.
Well, thank you so much, Mike. I truly appreciate being a guest on your program. This is going to be so much fun.
So what I failed to mention in my intro is that Deb is also a podcast host. Mm-hmm. And so this gives her the opportunity to be, quote, on the other side of the microphone. I know,
it's kind of scary.
Oh, no, you're going to do very, very well. And I've already told her before we started recording, I'm going to learn from her. But what we had discussed as a topic is of all the things you could talk about, I would like to kind of key in on how can our listeners are comprised mostly business leaders.
Okay.
How can they optimize their LinkedIn profile to build their personal brand? That's the topic. And so what if we start just kind of breaking that down? Deb, how do you define a personal brand?
Well, again, thank you so much for having me on your program. I do truly appreciate it. Your personal brand is, how do other people think of you? If someone were to say, tell me about Mike, what would people say? And so that is your personal brand. And, it's something that is very fragile because, one misstep can damage your personal brand. But I think it's also something that we tend to sometimes forget even exists.
When LinkedIn first came out, I was an early adopter of LinkedIn, and I, at the time, was in a corporate HR role, and I just saw it primarily as a recruiting tool.
Right.
And it seemed like most people were developing profiles because they were in the job market. Now, that is the case, but I know that you have found that oftentimes key leaders tend to think, there maybe isn't that much value for me as an executive to do so. How would you challenge that thinking?
Well, you're right. It is still a great platform to get jobs. And when it initially came out, we dutifully cut and pasted our resume and then never went back to it, right? I think it's a great tool for executives because as a business owner, as a business leader, we get very caught up in promoting our business, which we should be doing. We're talking about the products, we're talking about our services, things like that. But we forget that we are still a very important part of that business, that industry, that whatever it is. And LinkedIn is a fabulous place to have your personal brand, to have your personal identity. Yes, there's other social media platforms, but it's not appropriate really on Facebook or TikTok or Instagram or Twitter or, any of the myriad of platforms that come and go. LinkedIn truly is where your professional identity can live. And it's a great place for people to do that.
I didn't think about that until you just mentioned this, but a potential employee who's kind of doing due diligence on a potential employer, they go to the company's website. They would probably go to the company's LinkedIn profile, and then they would probably begin checking out key leaders. And I'm realizing that if the key leader doesn't have a profile, they're left to guess. But if their profile is incongruent with the business, then there's a potential disconnect.
Right. Or out of date. I mean, how many of us, like I said, we put our resume, we never went back to it. When I look at someone's profile and I see that it is years old and has not been updated, and it really doesn't matter what level they are, but my first thought is, are they keeping up with technology? Do they even realize just how important something like this is? It's better to actually have no presence than to have an outdated presence.
So let's say that what you have shared just then has convicted some of our listeners. And they
Mm-hmm.
say, you know what? I fit that definition. I'm
Mm-hmm.
in a key leadership role. Yeah, I set up this profile way back when. I haven't touched it.
Mm-hmm.
Could you just kind of walk us through some of the major steps that you advise your clients
Mm-hmm.
on what should they be thinking about when it comes to building their personal brand?
Sure. One of the first and most important things to me is to have a current photo. For many people, they do have professional photos that their business has taken, but you don't have to spend the 5, 6, 700, whatever it is to have professional images taken for this. A LinkedIn photo is simply a headshot. You want to have a nice plain background. For example, what I have behind me for those who are watching the video is too busy. You want to have just a nice background. And really, you can take it. Let me rephrase that. You can have someone else take the photo with your smartphone. I mean, it's a good resolution, things like that. Selfies, no, because it's awkward to hold the camera at a good angle. So you want to have someone else take the picture and make it current, and it's always a challenge, especially for women, because we change our hairstyles fairly often for some of us. And, my goal is that if someone were to actually meet you in person, if they've never met you before, they should be able to look at your LinkedIn picture and pick you out of a crowd. So, it does have to be fairly current. If you've gone a little gray, that's all right. We know that, maturity adds knowledge and experience. And so that's fine, but it does need to be a current picture. And then you also should have a great headline. LinkedIn still defaults your headline to whatever your most current job description is. And I'll be honest, I don't care that you're president, founder, CEO, whatever, of ABC Widget Company. Doesn't matter to me in the slightest. I want to know a little bit about what you do and what you stand for. Think of this as a newspaper headline. Yes, newspapers still exist, but we all remember them, right? Get somebody's attention with that headline and put it in there. Then there's also a great spot behind you called the cover image. Think of it as a billboard. What do you want to put there? Now, the tricky thing with LinkedIn is they change where your headshot appears. So you kind of have to play with that a little bit. So you might just want to have like a background that's a solid image, something so that if your headshot is in different places, it's okay, as opposed to having text that might get covered up. But use that billboard. I mean, it's a billboard. Give people a chance to see a little bit about you. And then the next most important thing is your about section. That's where you're telling your story. If no one reads anything else in your LinkedIn profile, they should know enough about you in the about section to know, oh my gosh, I really have to reach out and connect with this person. So when people ask me to review their profiles, I tell them without even looking at it, you need more, and take advantage of how much space LinkedIn gives us to fill those out. So your about section should not be 2 sentences. Your about section you have 2,000 characters. That's a lot. Now you might not want to fill that. I mean, that's a lot, but have more than 2 sentences. Tell people, your hopes, your dreams, your aspirations. And it's okay to put a little bit of fun stuff in there. Just remember, it is the professional network. So don't get too carried away.
So, Deb, I'm actually looking at your LinkedIn profile as we're recording
this. That's always, it's like, eek.
No. Because you are, in fact, practicing what you're preaching.
Well, good.
Let me share what Deb has. She prefers Deb, so she actually puts Deb in parentheses versus Deborah. And I noticed something that you didn't mention, but the little speaker icon.
Right.
Now, your last name is Krier,
correct,
but it's spelled
most people
I-E-R.
would say it Krier.
You've taken advantage of a relatively new feature. So if I click that right now, it would have you in your own voice pronouncing your first and last name.
Right. And you've got 10 seconds. So you can actually even say a little bit more than just, you pronounce my name Krier.
I like that. So you mentioned headline. So let me read parts of your headline. Unabashed connector, brimming with information, knowledge, and resources, strategic relationship builder, podcaster, college sports fan, and on. So I can read those bullets and I'm kind of going, I get it in real crisp ways.
Right.
But then, so you got your photo, you got your headline, you've got the background. And for those who are looking at Deb's background, it's got Deb's signature. It's very personal. And as I'm just looking at it, you're smiling and you appear very approachable. And I haven't even gotten to your about section.
Well, and that's the key in the picture is you want people to think that you are approachable. For some people, that's a little bit difficult. Smiling it doesn't always come easily to folks, but you want people to know, hey, this is a person that I really want to have a conversation with.
So you've shared, it's important that you have a current photo. It's important that you take advantage of the headline, that you don't miss the opportunity for the billboard in the form of a backdrop, and that the about section is a wonderful set of real estate to kind of tell your story. So what else are you advising people to pay attention to?
Well, obviously you need to have your experience in there. I've write quite a bit. You do have a lot of space for those. I always tell people, try to stick with experience that pertains to what you're doing now. For example, many years ago, I was a waitress. I was horrible at it. There would be no way I would ever include that in my LinkedIn profile because it doesn't in any way pertain. And so go back as far as you want. It's one of those areas where some people struggle, especially if they are older, with, is it going to show my age if I'm showing, that I've been in my career for 40 years or whatever. And again, I say, brag about it. That experience is why people want to connect with you. You've got that treasure trove of experience and knowledge. So it's okay to brag about that. Plus, people can do the math. They can figure things out anyway. So don't try and hide it. You've also got one of the important sections is, if it pertains, volunteer positions that you have held. Volunteer positions are great ways for people to get experience, sometimes that can enhance their career. So, maybe I had someone ask me one time, he was a lay minister and he said, should he put that in there? Well, I said, yes, for two reasons. First, I said, it shows that you have management experience because a lay minister was a leader in the church, working on budgets, hiring, things like that. But more importantly, it showed that he was a public speaker. And so he put that in there because of that. And he said, people mentioned it, they knew that he would be comfortable getting up in front of people and speaking. And then of course you have your education background, so put that in there because that's a great way to network with folks. You can look for other people who are alumni of the various places you've been. You don't have to have received a degree. I mean, it's any type of education experience. So it can be training programs you've had. Maybe, there's a community college, anything and everything. You can put that in that education section. And, we're probably not going to have as much content that we want to put there, but it's okay to say that you are a member of, a certain fraternity or sorority, you graduated magna cum laude, all of these various things. Again, it's more just to give people more in-depth knowledge about you.
I know we kind of started this conversation talking about the value to an executive for a LinkedIn profile. And so we're going to be kind of toggling between an executive's value and just the general public. Right. Is it your sense that most people create still to this day a LinkedIn profile for job search purposes?
I think so, which is why, and that's great. I mean, LinkedIn is an absolutely fabulous resource for employment. There are now, many companies that never list their job openings anywhere other than LinkedIn. There's certain ways that you can apply for jobs on LinkedIn and have it send your resume directly to the hiring manager. I mean, all sorts of things like that. So again, that's why you want to have that completely filled out. And I tell people in many cases, if you are applying for jobs, what someone finds about you online, especially on LinkedIn, is actually your first interview. If they like what they see there, then they proceed. So you really want to have that fleshed out and have that information. But then it is, it's kind of that two-part thing. It's for people who, aren't looking for another job. They might own their own business. They're a senior level executive. But one of the, I've heard this also several times where people have said, we're really happy with where we are. We're not looking for another job, but a headhunter or someone found them and made them literally an offer they couldn't refuse. So, that's another way that you can use it for employment. But it is a great way to have your personal brand, as we were talking about at the start, have your personal brand out there so that people know who they're going to be working with.
I just thought of something else as you were talking, and that is I have a friend who is an executive, and she's very well placed in this organization, and has decided that she would like to serve on for-profit boards.
Oh, yes. Fabulous.
And so what she has to be mindful of is that her LinkedIn profile has to speak to about what her current role is, but these organizations that would be considering her for a board position, if they go to that LinkedIn profile and it doesn't really reflect that personal brand you're talking about, then that may be a missed opportunity.
Right. I actually had that happen personally. I was asked to serve on the Dean's Advisory Board at the University of Colorado, which is my alma mater. And as part of that process, they said, we need your resume. And I went, resume? I haven't done a resume in 30 years probably. And I told him, I said, but I do have a pretty killer LinkedIn profile. And that was what they let me submit, because you can print that as a PDF and save it, or, and download it and save it. So that was what I submitted. And for them, it worked out perfect.
So we kind of have talked through the parts of a LinkedIn profile, and that it applies equally regardless of where you might be in your career. Let's go back to this online presence. And in my intro, I made reference to the fact that this is not accessible, not just in your own community, your own state, for that matter, your own country. And online presence is now worldwide.
Right.
How have you seen that change in the time you've been working with folks on LinkedIn? Has it really exploded to the extent that I suspect it has?
It has. I think that one of the things that I have seen is whether it's a job interview or maybe you're thinking of working with someone, having them be a business associate, or you're wanting to hire them, as a consultant, an employee, whatever. I think one of the very first things many of us do is we Google someone and we look to see what is out there, and that's where it gets tricky, because we do have all of these online presence. So, is your Facebook, is your Twitter, all of those accounts, are they going to withstand that scrutiny? Again, what would they find with someone on LinkedIn? We do use some of the other social media platforms, obviously very personal. And so we might be posting about things that, we don't always want our business associates or people like that to see. And so there's various ways where you can tighten that privacy down, and that's certainly something to consider is, if someone, is wanting to, maybe hire you as a consultant and you're posting about your weekend drinking binges, might not be the good thing to do unless, you're being hired by, say, a distillery. But, you can change your privacy settings to be friends only, and so that way they don't see it. But always be aware that even if you just met someone at a networking event, or one of my favorite things, we're all Zooming now, right? And so you've got all these little people that are up here. And so I've got two big monitors. So I have my Zoom monitor on one, and on the other, I have LinkedIn. And during webinars, I'm looking people up. I'm like, ooh, let's see what this person is like. What's this person like? And so I am continually looking people up all the time, again, to see, is this someone I want to have a business relationship with? Or, is this somebody that looks like a cool friend? I mean, because we're always expanding who we're connected with personally and professionally.
So what you just shared, that describes me to the T. I've already shared that I had your LinkedIn profile, but when I am on a group Zoom, if I'm not presenting and I'm listening I'm listening to someone, I can just easily on that second screen pull that up.
Yep.
I've done it, and I've received LinkedIn invitations while
in the middle of the meeting, right?
Yeah. So it tells me that I'm not alone, But that kind of stresses the sense of immediacy that we live in right now. And if you've not paid attention to your LinkedIn profile for a while, I'm getting a clear signal. This is a good wake-up call to why you should do that.
Well, I think especially because of the pandemic, we're doing so much more online. And it's just, it's like we said, it's a natural thing to be doing is you're in the meeting, you're looking them up at the same time or immediately afterwards.
Deb, you've been working with leaders for a long time. And, in your description, you describe helping C-level executives become more successful in business and in life. Can you reflect on maybe an example by which either you or a client got stuck? And what did y'all do to get unstuck?
Yeah, I think the biggest reason why we get stuck is lack of time or perceived lack of time. We don't update our LinkedIn profile. We're not active on LinkedIn because we think, it's going to take too much time. And I'm guilty of that. Do I check my LinkedIn profile every day? Yeah. But am I really active on it? Not as active as I should be. And even just updating it, it's interesting. I was kind of the cobbler's kid there for a while. My profile, if you looked at it, would have been embarrassing, and so it's the matter of just taking the time and doing it. And it's really not something that takes a ton of time just to bring it back up to speed. Now, clearly you can go beyond that, but just to bring it up to kind of that place where if people look at it, you wouldn't be embarrassed. That doesn't take a lot of time, but it is hard because we've got so many other things that we're doing that we think, yeah, whatever. But just, look at how many times you look people up and then realize, oh, what are they going to find when they look my stuff up?
And I know you have a business. In my intro, I described it, LinkedIn for the C-suite. Therefore, connections are obviously vitally important for you. Let's talk about that a little bit. As I'm looking at it, according to this, it kind of masks, it says you have 500 plus connections, but you have 4,800 followers.
Right.
What's a follower?
So it's a feature that you can turn on. And so it may even be one of the features that not everyone has right now. Someone can just follow you and not be connected. So they're going to see your posts, but that person isn't going to see so it's not reciprocal. I got mixed up as how to say that. So it's a one-way thing. I see your post, but they don't see my posts. But if you are connected, you're also a follower because you are seeing those posts. And so your connection number is, it contains the number of followers. So it's kind of a weird thing. And that is something that's fairly new that LinkedIn has done. I'm not sure why. I think maybe it could be because there are people who have massive numbers of just followers. It's that they're not connected with 10,000 people, but they might have 100,000 people who follow them for great content and things like that.
Yeah, I've learned a lot about LinkedIn and how LinkedIn as an organization has evolved over the years. It does describe itself as a connector and not necessarily just for those in the job market.
Right.
I can't tell you, my default search when I'm researching a company or individual has moved from Google to LinkedIn.
Right.
And I don't know if I'm alone out there, but I think that
you're
just
not.
it just really stresses how very, very important. So,
well, and we make snap judgments. I mean, that's the thing is, as we were saying at the start, if I look at somebody's LinkedIn profile and it's clearly out of date, I might not go any further.
Deb, I know that you could speak at length on a wide variety of topics. We kind of took a slice, and that is why having a current and well done, pardon my bad English, LinkedIn profile is important for all, but you've kind of stressed why that's particularly true for those in key leadership roles. And you're pointing out that personal brand that they are managing needs to be aligned with the business that they're managing. And we've listed several other things. As you kind of reflect on some of the things that we have talked about or have not talked about, what would you want our listeners to have as takeaways?
I think it's also important for people who want to be those executives to have a great LinkedIn presence, because those executives are looking up, people that they are going to hire, people that they're going to work with also. So what are they going to see? And of course, it's a great way to really be establishing yourself as that thought leader, as that person in the industry. And just because maybe you're 20 years old, it doesn't mean that you don't have important information that you want to share with people, even if you're just sharing other people's content. You're sharing articles from Forbes, from Inc., from Entrepreneur, from industry publications, things like that. It is a great place just to be making your presence known in a business world.
As I'm listening to you, it does come through loud and clear. You're a gifted speaker, and I introduced you as a podcaster, but podcasting for many is a relatively new thing.
It is.
You've been podcasting since 2011.
A long time of talking.
So I believe this is episode number 48 for the Get Unstuck. How many podcasts have you recorded thus far?
Well, August 31st will be our 700th podcast. So yeah, we've been doing it. Now we do 2 a week. So that does kind of, do a little bit more, but yeah, we hit 700 on August 31st.
That's phenomenal. The name of the podcast that you host, what is it?
It's pretty easy. It's the Business Power Hour.
I love it. Now, if folks want to reach out to you, Deb, what's the best way for them to do that?
Well, obviously LinkedIn, and so I think there's only 3 Deb Kriers on LinkedIn, actually in the world, and so just, put search in there. Now on LinkedIn, I am Deborah. That is as you were mentioning, I have my full name because Deb Krier was taken. And that's the other thing when you're creating your personal URL, sometimes it's a little difficult and you have to add a middle initial, some things like that. But yeah, if you look on LinkedIn for Deborah, and it's the old-fashioned way, DEBORAH, Krier, KRIER, you'll find me. Send me a request to connect, and please, in the request to connect, tell me that you heard our interview, because I love to connect with people who already have kind of a connection with us.
That would be fantastic. Now, we will be including Deb's LinkedIn profile. We'll be including a link to her website. We'll include a link to her podcast in the show notes. So don't feel like you've got to go write that all.
Don't scribble it down, especially if you're driving. No.
But this was as expected. This was so much fun. I kind of wish this was an hour-long podcast, because I could easily go.
Oh, we could have so much fun.
Well, and maybe we have that opportunity again. So, Deb, thank you so much.
Well, thank you.
I also want to thank our listeners for joining us for this episode of Get Unstuck and On Target. Every Thursday, we upload the latest episodes to all the major platforms. So if you haven't already, please subscribe. Life really is too short to let business problems keep you up at night. So if you've been listening to my conversation with Deb and you're realizing that something's keeping your business stuck, let's talk. Just go to our website, Bench-Builders, to schedule a quick call. So I want to thank you for joining us, and I hope you have picked up on some tips that help you get unstuck and on target. Until next time.